Hello and welcome back to the My First Marathon podcast. My name is Taylor, and today's runner doesn't need much of an introduction. The fact that he's ran over 100 marathons is introduction enough. We broke down his favorite races, his least favorite races, some advice he has for new runners and experienced runners, and all of the action in between. This is by far the most experienced runner we've had on the show so far, so I'll keep the introduction short and just get right into it. Please welcome Charlie. Charlie, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. How's your weekend going so far?
So far, it was really great. We were in Detroit over the weekend with niece and nephew. Saw the Detroit Tigers yesterday and hit a few restaurants and pubs downtown Detroit and drove home this morning. So it's been a great weekend so far.
Awesome. And we were just talking, the weather's not too bad in Georgia, so I'm sure you'll get to finish out the weekend on a nice note here. But yeah, just thank you again for coming on. I'm really excited to talk to you. For the audience, if you remember, I interviewed Scott Davidson a couple of episodes back, and he actually introduced me to Charlie because Charlie has ran 111 marathons. So I think you're by far the most experienced runner that we've had on so far. So looking forward to kind of breaking down your story.
Great.
All right, great. Well, let's kind of take it from the beginning. I'm so curious, how did you even end up in this crazy world? How did you end up being interested in running marathons in the first place?
How I ended up starting all of this was I was a little over 200 pounds with high cholesterol, and my doctor at an annual physical said, you should walk a few miles a few days a week. So there was a nice 3-mile loop around where I lived at the time. And I walked 3 miles a couple of times. And I thought, well, that's pretty cool. And I thought, geez, if I run from this telephone pole to that telephone pole every now and then, I'll get home quicker so I can watch Jeopardy. So
Yeah.
I would run it from one telephone to 2 to 3 to 4. And after a couple of weeks, I had run 3 miles without stopping. And I was wearing my leather high top Nike basketball shoes with knee socks. And then when I was after running 3 miles a few times, I thought, well, I need some cool shoes. So I bought some Asics Tiger Gel running shoes and crew socks instead of knee socks. And then from that point on, I was hooked on running.
Cool. So got into it pretty organically then. You kind of had a health reason for getting into it initially, and you were thinking, I need to get this done a little bit quicker. So I'm going to start running.
Absolutely.
I love
And
that. Cool.
I worked with a few people that were runners, and it was interesting talking to them about running. So that was kind of give us something to do on break or lunchtime to talk about.
Sure. Yeah, that's great. The running community, wherever you can find it, is huge. It's just the people around you that can relate to what you're doing is definitely important.
Yes.
Well, cool. So how did things progress from there? Were you just kind of starting to build up mileage slowly and then led you to a race distance, or where did we go from there?
Yeah, what happened was after I was running 3 miles, fairly easily, I was in my late 30s at the time. I think I was 39 at the time. There was a local 4-mile race that I ran, and well, that was pretty cool. And I got a T-shirt, and I thought, wow, you're running, you pay $20 and get a T-shirt. So it gradually increased from a 4-mile was my first race, running 5Ks and then 10Ks. And in Frankenmuth, Michigan, there's a 20K that I ran a couple times. So that's little over 12 miles. And then in Grand Rapids, Michigan, there's a 25K, 15 and a half miles that I ran that. And I thought, geez, that was in May of 89. And I thought, if I can run 15 and a half miles, maybe with some more training, I can run 26 miles. So I ran my first marathon in 1989 in Columbus, Ohio. So it was kind of organic going from walking 3 miles to running a marathon. And it was about a year and a half from the time I started running until I did my first marathon in Columbus, Ohio.
Cool. Yeah, so that happened pretty quickly. I know a year and a half seems like a long time, but in the running world, especially when you're starting from basically zero, like that's not a long time at all. So you dove right in.
Yeah, and between the time that I bought my first pair of running shoes until the first marathon, I bought a pair that fit.
That helps. That helps a lot.
Yeah. I had a lot of black toenails. The first pair of running shoes I got were a little bit tight, so I had a lot of black toenails.
Yeah, we talk about that a lot on this show, about how the importance of getting good shoes early on and making sure that you get something that's maybe a little bit half a size too big, so you've got a little bit of room to move. But shoes are definitely huge for sure.
Absolutely.
Well, cool. So you got to your first marathon. How did you decide that you even wanted to sign up for a first marathon? Was it just like you had gotten to a certain mileage and thought, why not? Or was there anything else that was really inspiring you to do it?
Actually, after I did the 25K in Grand Rapids, Michigan, a friend of mine basically told me, he said, if you can do 15 and a half, you can do 26. And he
Mm,
suggested Columbus, Ohio. So actually, it was kind of a friend of mine that kind of pointed me in the direction of a marathon.
cool. Cool. Yeah, that helps. Sometimes you need the little nudge from your friends to
Yeah,
get yourself to
yeah.
do it. Cool. Well, what was the marathon experience like for you? Did it go pretty smooth, what you expected, or were there any sort of hiccups for your first
Mm,
one?
it was actually pretty darn easy in the sense that I didn't kill it. I ran the whole way, and it was quite an experience. It was an easy run because I trained really well.
Yeah. What do you
I
think
did.
you
I
did
think.
in
I think I did.
training?
Yeah, I think I did 3 or 4 23 milers up to that
Okay.
point, and I listened to a lot of Tom Petty on my Walkman cassette player to the song I won't back down" by Tom Petty. Cut me running. So I told myself I'm not going to back down.
I love that. That's so cool. So what do you think you did during training? I know you ran your 23 miles a couple of times, but what do you think was really the difference maker for you on why race day was so kind of easy?
It was Columbus is a great course, great crowd support. Um, just good training, and I I visioned to myself, in dreams about running and running well, and I was real pleased with the time. I think it was 3:40, 3:41 for the
Wow,
first marathon. So I was real
that's
pleased with
great.
that. Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great.
And I
Well,
had just turned 40, and it wasn't a midlife crisis. It was the fact that I was wanting to get my cholesterol down. And anybody who's
yeah.
listening, running may not be the total answer, but running does help get your cholesterol down.
Yeah, that's good to know. Good to know. It helps in a lot of ways. You're actually
Yes,
one of a few people that I've interviewed so far that have started their journey from a health reason, and
yeah.
ultimately, yes, it ended up solving the health reason, but gained so much more than just solving the issue that you got into it for. So running is great for that, I think.
Yes, and the first I would mention, running friends are great. For the first couple of years I ran by myself, trained by
Mm.
myself. People I worked with were runners, but we didn't live near each other, so I would run by myself.
And then did that change at a certain point where you started to get more involved with like your community and things like that?
Yeah, we moved from a small town in Michigan to near Lansing, Michigan, which is pretty good size, and there were several running groups there that I hooked up with, and they became w- my best friends.
Yeah. Yeah, what was the difference like for you when you transitioned from, like, running solo to running with a group? What was that transition like?
They were faster than I was when we started out. So I was, keeping up with them and not killing myself, but keeping up with them. And it was easier to run with somebody. And the secret, the key is I would ask a question that would elicit like a 7-minute answer. So I didn't have to talk, and they were talking and they were getting out of breath so I could keep up with them.
I love that. That's a great strategy. I'm gonna have to try that one out because I try to run with run groups that are a little bit faster than me too, and it would be great if they kept the conversation one-sided and I just got to
Right.
listen.
Yeah. Yeah. And every now and then, just being polite, I would say, uh huh. Oh, wow. But I wasn't listening to them.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's great. I love that. Well, cool. Well, obviously something from the first marathon hooked you because you ended up running 110 more. So what about your original race experience got you to say, okay, I want to do a few more of these things?
Well, I did another one the second year, the same, in Columbus, and then a couple years. I hadn't done any for a couple years, and I got engaged to a gal, Pat, who was sitting here listening, um, and I signed up for the Big Sur Marathon,
Oh,
and
cool.
she went well, we went together, and I did the Big Sur Marathon, and I ran. I think it was like a 3:31 on a very tough course,
Yeah.
and we're sitting on the way home. We're sitting in the San Jose airport, and I think I had Runner's World with me. And in Traverse City, Michigan, there was a marathon a month later. So we decided to try to qualify at Traverse City, and I needed a 3:25. So it was 6 minutes faster than what I had run at Big Sur. And Big Sur is a really tough course. So we went to Traverse City. I think that would have been my fourth marathon maybe, and I qualified for Boston, and that was
Wow.
all she wrote. I mean, that was it.
Yeah. Was that always the goal for you once you found out about Boston and found out about qualifying and all that? Was that always the goal? Was I'm gonna Boston qualify at some point?
Well, after I it no, it wasn't until I ran Big Sur and thought, geez, if I can run 6 minutes faster on a flat course, then I started thinking about it. And
Yeah.
actually, we spent a few days in California after the Big Sur, and one evening, one of the TV channels was replaying the Boston Marathon, so I watched it, and that really did it. So from that point
Yeah.
on, I was hooked. And the marathon in Traverse City, I was able to run a 3:19. Now,
Wow.
kind of a backstory anecdote is that I told Pat, we were not married at the time, but I said if I can run a 3:20, we will go to England.
Oh, so there was a lot riding on this
Yeah,
race.
and I ran a 3:19, um, and then the next day I said, "Well, geez, well, back up a little." So we said, "We'll go to London," because I ran under 3:20. Well, over
Yeah.
the next a course of a few months, I realized that I had qualified for Boston, and I said, "Well, why don't we get married on April 7th, which is a Friday? We'll fly to UK the next day for 7 days. We'll fly back to Boston the next Sunday." So I ran my first Boston Marathon on my honeymoon.
Oh my gosh.
And
So that
it was
was
all about me.
quick.
Yeah, it was all about me. And I took Pat along, but she didn't
Well,
want to drive in there. Yeah. So it was all
the
about me.
right, right. Well, the
But
spectators are a big part of it, right? We'll
yeah,
give props to her for coming along for the ride. I give
yep,
props to my
yep,
boyfriend all the time. He
yep,
goes he's up at 4 a.m. with me. He's at
yep,
race day getting, good pictures at the finish line. It's huge.
yeah, yeah. And the Big Sur was her first marathon, and they busted us up to the start. So she was at the starting line like at 4:30 in the morning. And the thing that impressed her, and she said, I'm going to like this sport. A big Coors beer truck came in, and they're unloading kegs of beer.
There's
um,
always something at these
yeah,
races for sure.
and
Yeah.
then you mentioned about support. Out of my 111 marathons, I've done 108 or 109 since we've been together, and she's been to 88 of the marathons.
Wow. Wow.
And we use marathon good experience, good reason to travel. So we've been
Yeah.
all over the country, many marathons. Never had a real desire to do all 50 states because some of the places we loved so much, we would go back and forth.
Sure.
I've run St. George Marathon 8 or 9 times, and Ogden, Utah, 7 or 8 times. So we go back to the same place so many times that it kind of ruled off the ability or the chance to go to all 50 states.
Yeah,
But
sure. That
we're
makes sense
happy with
though.
it. Yeah, we're happy
Yeah,
with that.
exactly. Exactly. What does a race have to have? Like what qualities does a race have to have for you to want to go back and do it again?
Well, I like downhill, but they don't all have that.
Sure.
um, it's, we like well, we like destination marathons. Utah is beautiful. So
Sure.
altogether, I think I've done 14, 15 marathons in Utah. Um, that's beautiful. Boston, I've done 21 times, and Boston's Boston. There's don't have to explain why we go back to Boston.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, it's the destination. I've done a few marathons where she was unable to go that I wouldn't do that again just because there wasn't very exciting destination.
Sure. Sure. Well, cool. Yeah, it definitely is it makes it a little bit more fun to have an extra reason outside of the marathon to go visit some of these spots. You've
Yes,
got you
yes.
can make a whole weekend out of it and like you can
Yep,
travel with your wife and do fun things. I think that's great.
yep.
Um so for these destination marathons or I guess just over time, like what was the overall strategy for training for running all of these marathons? I assume you're doing one or two a year. So what was training like as you're signing up for all of these races?
The first few years I was doing 2 or 3 a year and then running with my Lansing, Michigan running friends. And as the years went on, I was doing 7, 8 marathons a year. I think one
Wow.
year I did 11. So I really didn't have to do much long run between marathons because I was in marathon shape. But
Yeah.
the the fun in training, uh, the long runs were with the running friends. Where
Cool.
we're
And
again where I'd ask them a question, they'd have to talk for 6, 7 minutes.
Yeah,
And
that's
then it
perfect.
was real social. And I saw a documentary once, and I didn't make this up, but I really like it. Is when you're running with long distances with running buddies, you talk about everything but running. But then when you
Sure.
get together socially at night, you talk about nothing but running. So then,
Right, right.
yeah, if the significant others aren't running people, then they talk about whatever. So uh, it it was the community, the camaraderie.
Yeah. Yeah, you meet a lot of people in this sport. There's not a lot of people that are crazy enough to run marathons, so when you find your group of people that can relate to you, it's definitely important. Um,
Mhm.
how did your body kind of hold up running 7, 8, 9 to 11 marathons a year? Like, did you ever have any periods where you went through injury, or how did you prevent them?
I didn't prevent them. Been pretty lucky with injuries. I had my one knee scoped in 1995, and it's still doing well. And I had another one scoped 6 7 years ago. So my knees have been pretty darn good. I've had pulled calves and pulled hamstrings,
Sure.
but nothing to keep me down for more than a few weeks or a month. Actually, the biggest injury I ever had that prevented me from running was not running injury. I had detached retina 2 weeks
Mm.
before Boston in 2013. I had run at
Oh,
Boston
wow.
eight. I'd run Boston 18 years in a row and had qualified. We were ready to go in 2013. Had a detached retina, and my eye doctors said, "Don't go. You might go blind." So we were not there during the bombing. I had friends there, and they were safe. They were good, and I would have
Yeah.
probably been okay. Uh, I think I would have been before the occasions, and then we went back 3 years in a row after that.
Wow. Wow. Well, I mean, good timing for horrible about the retina, but seems like pretty lucky timing to have it be that race that brought you out.
Yeah, that's what people say, and I was really sad not to be there.
Yeah.
Just not because of I mean, basically because of my streak was broken.
Yeah,
See,
yeah, yeah.
it's all about me.
Well, it's all about the run streak too.
Yeah,
That's a big one for people.
yeah, yeah.
Is making sure you can go keep the streak alive. But I mean, Boston that many times is incredible. What is your favorite Boston experience? I guess if you remember which one stands out to you amongst some of the other ones.
The first, of course, which was on our way home from our honeymoon,
Oh yeah.
and the 100th the next year. Um, my brother lives in Hartford, Connecticut, so oftentimes we would drive when we'd visit my brother and his family in Hartford on the way to Boston. In 2005, well, my best Boston was 3:16. My worst Boston was in 2015. I had hypothermia, and it took me 3.5 hours to do the last 10K. That
Wow.
was over 6 hours, and I was just shuffling. And every time I'd see a volunteer or a cop, I would try to run so they didn't think I was near death, but I was.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure I answered your question, but they're all special. Not well, actually another one of the most well, and Pat went to every Boston. She's been to Boston 21 times, and
Wow.
we've taken other friends and relatives um, to Boston with us. But the uh, one of the funnest times was in 2009. We took our two older granddaughters who were in second and third grade to Boston with us, and they
Incredible. Yeah.
they experienced, and that was something. That was special.
Totally. Yeah. What a cool example. I mean, any race that you can take somebody that young to is going to be impactful, I'm sure, but especially Boston, having them around that environment and seeing all these incredible runners, I'm sure that was cool for them.
Yeah, and we a couple years later we took our daughter Rachel. So I ran Boston with my daughter. We started in the same bin. We got separated, but we finished within like a minute of each other. We didn't
Oh,
see each
wow.
other, but uh, in the Boston, the city of Boston, we love. We'd stay in a B&B, just half a mile from the finish line. So that was really cool. And the kids were great. People were impressed that second and third graders were so into it.
Yeah. Yeah. How much of your family is in marathon running? You said your wife runs or your daughter
No,
runs. Who else? Is there anybody else in your family that
well,
is in
Pat
the
Pat
space?
walks. Pat walks. She runs or
Uh-huh.
walks. She walks 6 to 8 miles a day, 5 days a week.
Yeah. Wow.
But, my daughter ran, she did 4 or 5 marathons, and right now she's into fitness, like bodybuilding stuff, so she doesn't run anymore, but she's certainly healthy and works out every day.
Yeah.
Um, I have a nephew and his wife that have done a few marathons, but nobody in the immediate family currently runs. Although our oldest granddaughter told us the other day that she's started running, she wants to do a 5K with me this summer.
Oh, how cool.
Yeah,
That's gonna be great. You're
and actually,
inspiring the family.
yeah, and Lulu, our youngest, who's 7, we've done some races together, fun runs. In fact, we did one Wednesday evening with a local group raising money for the American Cancer Society.
Oh, I
So
love that.
Lulu's a runner, but she hasn't done any 5Ks yet, but she will.
Yeah, yeah, she'll get there for sure. Yeah, you're
Abs-
raising this next generation of runners here.
Absolutely. I hope
That's
so.
amazing.
Yeah, I hope so.
That's very cool. Well, cool. Well, I know before we started, you've said that you had a best marathon and a worst marathon experience that really stood out to you. So I'd love to maybe we start with the worst and end on the best. What was your worst marathon experience that stood out to you?
It's in the one in 2015 in Boston when I got hypothermia, and I
That makes sense.
just I I can't believe that I finished it. And at around the 20-mile mark, there was a woman standing on the sidelines. I didn't know her, a spectator. I said, "Do you have a cell phone?" So I had her dial Pat's number, and I just said, I'm at the 20-mile mark, and I'm going to finish, but it's going to take a while. And it took me, like I say, 3.5 hours or so. That was that was the worst. In fact, when after I crossed the finish line, I had to have a guy help me step up on the curb.
Mm.
I didn't want to walk to the where there was a ramp. So I had trouble getting back to the hotel. He literally arm in arm kind of carried me. So that was the worst time wise and the worst experience because the people who were tracking me lost track of me, and my wife and a couple other friends were in Boston at the time. They were getting ready to call hospital emergency rooms.
Oh
So that
yeah,
was the
I
worst.
bet.
That was the worst. The
Yeah.
best was probably my fastest because a friend of ours who was here from Australia ran it with me. He didn't run. We didn't run together, but it was his first marathon. So that was quite an experience. The 100th, yeah, my 100th marathon in Traverse
Yeah.
City. We had all the family there, kids and grandkids, and a bunch of our. I went for a while. We lived in Ionia, Michigan, where I founded the Beautiful People Running Club. So there was probably 20 of them up there, and half of them ran it. And the local, unbeknownst to me, the running friends made a big banner that it was my 100th marathon, and the local TV station got a hold of that. So they interviewed me
So
on
cool.
TV after the race, and then I
So
passed
cool.
out, and then I crashed from the excitement.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure
Yeah,
that's just such an incredible feat that you get to at least have like a celebration after the fact
yeah,
after maybe you
yeah,
rested for a second.
yeah. And my daughter, who had run marathons before, she didn't cross the finish line with me because that's kind of cheesy, but she ran the last couple miles with me, cheering and
Cool.
telling people that, oh, it was my 100th. Right.
That's
Yeah.
so cool.
Right. Yeah. And the grandkids made a big sign at the finish line. So that was really exciting. Um, but I've really been happy with every marathon that I finished. Actually, I finished every marathon that I started.
That's what I was gonna ask is if you
Yeah.
ever had any DNF or do not finish moments or
Nope.
if everything has been a success for you.
Nope. In fact, I finished one marathon. I wasn't planning on it. We were in Las Vegas, and I was just going to do a long run because it wasn't marathon time. So I registered for the Las Vegas Marathon. And I asked the race director, "Where's mile 19 or where's mile 20?" And he said, "Oh, out on the Las Vegas Boulevard at the 7-Eleven at whatever road." So the day before the race, Pat and I drove out there and said, "Okay, you drive here, and I'll at the 19-mile mark. When I see you, I'll stop and we'll drive back to the hotel. Just going to be a long run." I got to the
Yeah.
19-mile mark, no 7-Eleven, 20-mile mark, no 7-Eleven. Finally, about the 23 or 24-mile mark, that was the 7-Eleven that I thought was the 19-mile. I said,
Yeah.
hell, I only got 2 miles to go. I'm going to finish. So,
Yeah, you might as
so
well.
I finished one that I didn't plan on
That's
finishing.
so funny. Well, you got to get the t-shirt, right? We'll do just
Absolutely.
about
Yeah.
anything for
I
the
already,
t-shirt.
I already had the T-shirt, but
Oh, okay.
I don't wear T-shirts if I haven't. I don't wear T-shirts if I haven't finished the race.
There you
Uh,
go. Yeah.
okay. that's that's fun. Um, Beautiful races, St. George, Utah, Ogden, Utah, and I like Ogden because there's a lot of tie-dyed T-shirts and ponytails, and
Sure,
I'm
sure.
kind of an old hippie, so that was always kind of fun.
Yeah, that was your crowd.
Yep, absolutely.
Cool. Well, I'm curious, that marathon, not to keep going back to the
Yep,
worst one for you, but,
yep.
that marathon that you said you had hyperthermia, did you go into the race feeling like that, or that was
No,
something
it
that
was
you
it was
developed
it was
on
a
the
cold
race?
it was a cold, rainy day,
Okay.
and I'd never had that before, and I might have started out slower, so I was out there a longer time, but it was it was it was pretty bad. Um, I stopped one time along the way and hit a portage on, and coming out, I fell down. I mean, I was so out of it,
Oh
I
gosh.
fell down. Um,
Yeah.
but like I say, I was walking in the last 6 months. I was walking most of it, and I would try to run if I saw a policeman or a volunteer, and I was actually walking faster than I was running. I
Oh,
would try to
yeah, you
run,
were
it
just
was coming down.
shuffling.
So yeah, made it back with some help to the B&B, and uh, took a hot shower, and then just sat for an hour or two with blankets wrapped around me. Later a few hours later, I came around okay, but that was absolutely the worst. I was kind of out of it until
Yeah.
I got warmed up, and it took a while.
What do you say to yourself during those moments? Like, if you remember, well, like, why
Yeah,
not just DNF? What seems like it would be pretty easy to go, I've got hypothermia. I'm going to sit this one out. So,
yeah.
like, what kept you motivated to finish that
Well,
one?
I didn't know I had hypothermia. I just
Uh
knew I
huh.
was really slow. And in fact,
Sure.
I didn't know I was just really slow and really felt like I didn't feel good. And it was I guess I wanted to finish what I started.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, I had done, that was probably my 100 and, I don't know, that might have been my 90. Oh, that was my 99th marathon. And it was a month later I did my 100th. So I was lucid enough to know if I don't finish this one, then next month it's going to be 99, not 100. And we had a bunch of people
Yeah.
committed to it. So after we got back to the B&B and warmed up, I Googled um, symptoms of hypothermia. There's like 7 of them. Check, 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 check.
Yep. So you knew you
But
had it. Yeah.
and it's in effect, I mean, it's a good story, and um, some of my grandkids have taken that to heart. To finish what you start, if you can.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. It's something that I think is important to pass on to the like you're doing to the next generation of runners that it's you if you're going to commit to something to make sure that you see it all the way through, especially something like Boston, it's a big deal.
Yeah, and it goes back to when I finish what you start, and it kind of goes back to ego. I mean, it's an ego thing,
Mhm.
and I love it when people say, "Wow, you've run 100." Yeah, I mean, it's an ego thing. I like people to say, "Wow, that's cool."
Sure, sure. Yeah,
Why
no,
not?
it is
Why
great.
not?
Lot of ego in the running space for sure. Like
Absolutely. Yeah.
we want to wear our t-shirts around, wear our medals. I got all mine
Yeah.
right behind me. We
Yeah.
it's important, right?
Yeah. Ours are
Um
my medals are hanging up down in our family room. I Pat has hung them up, and when Lulu comes over, she has to you know do like a xylophone. She runs her hands across all the medals, ding 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 ding. So
I love
that's
that.
kind of fun. It's like the Charlie Russ shrine down there.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Cool. Well, I'm so curious about since you have so many experiences under your belt. I'm so curious about any like advice that you would offer to somebody who's maybe a little bit earlier on in their journey, and is looking to run as a good amount of marathons like you've ran.
Start slow, add add mileage and speed very incrementally. Don't don't try to keep up with the person in front of you. Um, just you you run your own race or do your own training thing. Find a group to run with, and if you can find somebody that's pace compatible, do that. But or don't try to overdo it. We've got a lot of races where you have little kids starting in the front line, and then they get out 75 yards and then they're walking. So start at the middle or start at the back, and then as you go down or get further into the race, you're able to pass people, and that's fun to pick people off and put your pistol back in your holster and blow the smoke, but it's
Yeah.
go slow, go easy. um, don't quit, and if you're injured, quit for quit until you're healed. Don't run through injuries. I've had so
Sure.
many running friends that run through things. They end up with stress fractures and you know hamstring tears, not just pulled muscles. So take the time off when you're hurt, and
Yeah.
seek medical advice or physical therapy or a personal trainer. Just don't don't try to be a macho or whatever the opposite of macho is, dude or woman.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's important. Yeah, not pushing yourself through injury. I always say if it's your mind telling you no, push through it. If it's your body telling you no, maybe take a second to
Yeah,
evaluate and make sure that
yes,
you're
that
making the best choice.
yep, absolutely. And I've been smart in that sense that if I've had an injury, which I've been lucky, knock on wood, a pulled muscle or a cramp or whatever, I take some time off
Sure.
and try to rest up. And I've been to physical therapy many times over the years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
It's huge.
so that would be my thought. And as I had mentioned earlier, I started a running club in Ionia, Michigan, and the name of the race was, or the name of the race, the name of the group was the Beautiful People Running Club. And
I
if,
love
if you
that.
saw us, if you saw us all, it would be like, oh, I get it. And I had run with the groups in Lansing as just kind of a follower, but when we got to Ionia, there was no running club, so I sort of started it. And we would run get together a couple days a week, one evening a week, and then a Saturday or Sunday and do long runs or easy runs, and then have breakfast or supper or whatever. So running with a group is good. And
Yeah.
there was the running clubs that I was involved with earlier. Kind of the motto was nobody runs alone. Now there's a local group that I kind of run alone because they're all way out in front of me, so they don't embrace me or any other runner. So go back to the advice for people: if you do join a club, find somebody that's pace compatible, or if you're faster and somebody joins you slower, run with them. Don't. There's nothing more aggravating than waiting until 6 or 7 o'clock at night. Then you end up running by yourself. When if you're retired, you got the day off, you might as well get it out of the way in the morning because you're going to run by
Right.
yourself anyway.
Right, right. No, yeah, pace. Finding a group that fits your pace is huge. I've talked to about that with a few people too. About how there's even this runner that I interviewed. She has her own running group, and her whole thing is I'm going to be the last. If I'm the guide, I'm the person that's bringing up the pack so that everybody's in front of me.
Yes.
And like you said, I think that that's so important. So what did you feel like was different running your own run club or run group than being a part of one?
Um, boy, I don't. I guess I could set the time what day we're going to run.
That
If-
helps. Yeah, so a little more on your schedule.
yeah, and again, back to the point of, I always made sure that somebody had somebody to run with. Um,
Yes.
that and I used to be kind of fast. I'm not anymore, but there's many times when I'd run with somebody running 10, 11 minute miles, and I easily could have been running sevens myself. Now I struggle running 11s, but so it's embracing somebody, because if you have maybe a starting out runner joining a group and then they end up running by themselves, nobody's talking to them, they think, what the heck, I can do this by myself. So I would say
Yeah.
that's the most important thing, is embrace somebody and encourage them and run or walk with them. And the other thing, and when you're starting out, I learned this years later, when you're training, if you need to walk a little bit, walk a little bit, walk 30
Yeah.
steps. And that's important. In fact, the last few marathons I've done, I I would walk a few times, maybe 50 steps, and that's a huge difference, and it really doesn't slow you down that much. You're losing a few seconds, not minutes. So take a break if you need it, and
Yeah.
hydrate.
Yeah, yeah. That was actually something I was gonna ask you about. Did you have any sort of when for any of your marathons where did you have any sort of hydration strategy or fuel strategy that you followed that you felt like really helped you?
Not really. I would, pack a couple goos and
Mhm.
Gatorade, but and that was I drank a lot of water, a lot of Gatorade. But what really kept me going, actually, now that you bring it up, is I love Wendy's hamburgers. So what got
Oh,
me
no
through a lot
way.
of marathons is I saw Wendy's on the way coming to the start. We're going to go through Wendy's on the way home. So in fact, it was kind of a joke among the Lansing running groups. They would say, "Charlie, off to Wendy's." So, but I hydrated, goo hydrate, and before the race, long race, I bagel, banana, nothing super heavy.
Yeah. Okay, so a lot of whole foods. That's great to if that's your post-race meal. You've got a
Yeah,
you've got a
yeah.
motivator in any city you go to.
Yeah, yeah. Now it's we not so much in the hamburgers anymore, but back then it was Wendy's burgers,
Yeah.
Wendy's burgers and chili, and
And chili.
then a nice nap after a
Yes.
marathon.
The post-race nap is the
Yep,
best for
yeah,
sure.
yep. And when we're with the groups, then we have a big get together in the evening for a dinner.
Cool. So you got to kind of recap the race as a group
Absolutely, yeah,
together.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm sure that was fun. Well, cool. Well, since you've ran so many and since you were doing so many in a year, what did you ever run any like back to back, like same weekend or same month or anything like that?
One time, just once, I ran them a week apart. It was Ogden, Utah, in May, and then a week later, Bayshore Marathon in Traverse City. And I don't recommend that. That,
Yeah.
that was tough. But I've run many a month apart. In fact, the year
Okay.
that I did 11, I think I skipped 1 month. Um,
Oh, yeah.
I
That
did
makes
it
sense.
once.
Yeah.
I, I I did it once, and I can't remember why. I don't think it was just because I could. I think it was because the way the dates were set. I liked both of those marathons, and it just happened to be they were a week apart when normally they were 2 weeks apart.
Okay.
It was
W-
it was tough. Another thing I've done really, or 4 or 5 times, they're really fun, is the like Ragnar races, Hood to Coast. Those kind of races
Mm.
are fun where you got 10 or 12 people on a team and a couple of vans, and you go 200 miles, 220 miles straight, and then you
Yes.
kind of leapfrog along. So I've done quite a few relays, whether it be the super long ones or three days during the day, three 3 days we do 70, 80 miles a day, but then go get a
Wow.
motel at night. So those are
Sure.
those are fun. You meet a lot of people. In fact, a lot of my current friends are people that I met from other cities on these relays because you're standing around waiting for your ruddy to come in, and you talk to somebody, then you see them at the next leg and the next leg. So those are really
Mm.
fun. So if you tell runners if they get a chance to join a relay team, that's really fun because
Yeah.
you're part of a team, and generally on those people are really supportive. Whether
Yeah.
and you don't really have to be pace compatible there because you might run a 6 minute mile and I might run a 10 minute mile, but you're all cheering for each other. So big point. G- Join a relay team, form a relay
Yeah.
team. Those are really cool.
I would love to do that one day. When it's funny, when I was a kid, I used to pass out. I'm originally from the West Coast, from Oregon, and I used to pass out water at this Hood to Coast race every year in
Okay.
the Eugene area.
Yeah.
And I always thought it was so cool. Like everybody out there, that's what originally kind of introduced me to like the ultra space is people running for more than 26 miles, even if it's a relay. But yeah, I think it's really great because it's a little bit more pace inclusive. Not everybody is out there trying to race each other. It's like very communicative and very community focused, I would say.
Yeah. I did Hood to Coast once in
Oh, cool.
2009, and these Ragnar races three or four times. One one of the Ragnar races we did was on Cape Cod. That it started
Oh,
just south of
cool.
Boston, ended up in Provincetown. That was really fun.
Very cool. Did you ever dip your toes into the ultra marathon world at all, or did you kind of stick to the marathons for the most part?
Um, I never did stick my toes into the ultra marathon. I always thought it'd be a good idea, but I was
Hmm.
just a little bit lazy to do that much work. And I used to have
Sure.
I had a sticker that I put on my car. Um, the longest distance I ever ran was like 27 and a half miles because I missed a turn in a marathon. I wasn't the only
Uh-huh.
one. Um, but the sticker, you see these that say 26.2 and all that. This one said like 27.8, and underneath it, it said, I got lost. Uh, I always thought it was a great idea to alter, and I've got a lot of friends that have done, 50K, 50 miles, and even, 100 miles a few
Yeah,
times. It just never, never seriously considered it, but I just thought it was really cool.
sure. It's funny you saying that you were lazy when you ran 111 marathons. I would say
Yeah.
that's pretty far from lazy,
Well,
but I know what you mean.
yeah, I didn't want to do any more than I was doing.
Yes, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah,
So when you did those races that were back to back, the ones that you did a week apart, like, do you just taper in between them, or do you do any sort of running in between? I'm just
I
so
think I
curious
did
what that looks
one or
like.
1 or 2 days of 3 miles, maybe. I think they were both Saturday races, so I think we probably flew home the day after flew home on Sunday, and I think I might have done 3 miles on Tuesday and Wednesday, and then took Thursday, Friday off. And
Okay.
um, my strategies after doing a few marathons was I would take 3 days off before the marathon and get really rested and really raring to go. But often it was 2 days, but then I got into 3 days off before because I was in pretty good shape and just, taking it
Yeah.
easy. So,
Yeah, what would you say? I guess that's a great question too. Is like what typically is your week, 2 week before a marathon routine that you
mhm.
stick to pretty consistently?
Yeah. Early on, before in marathons, I was doing a long run 2 weeks before the marathon. But and then the week of, I would do 3 or 4 miles, nothing crazy long during the week. And I'd take 2 or 3 days off. And I would have pasta the night before, but I didn't do any super, carb depletion or anything. Nothing. It was too much work to think about that. So I'd have spaghetti the
Yeah.
night before. Um, Generally, pretty similar to what I'd been doing all year. So I would take the first few marathons or first whatever. I would take my last long run 2 weeks before. Then I got to the point where I would do my last long run 3 weeks before, and maybe do an 8 or 10 miler 2 weeks before to just kind of for my head. And I was never a real mileage. I don't want to say hog. Some of my friends would, boy, if I don't do 100 miles this week or something, I ran only once in my life did I hit 60-mile week,
Mm,
and only once in my life did I have a 200-mile month. It happened to be the same month, but I had done a marathon on a Sunday, and I don't maybe did an 8 or 10 miler during the week, and then did a maybe 16 or 18 miler at the end of the week. But only once, I did 60 miles, and I had friends that if they only did 60 miles, they were having a down week, and I just never felt the need, and always had other things to do.
yeah, yeah. What do you focus on instead, if not mileage? Like, what's your training strategy for the week? Do you have like a certain time you want to be outside, or what do you track typically?
Um, no real strategy. I would not any real strategy. I would try to do some speed work a couple weeks before, and for
Hmm.
me to do speed work to go to the track, that was a lot of work. So for me to do speed work, I would just do a 5K a
Mm.
week or two before. It was easier that way, and then of course you get the T-shirt. Once in a great
Sure.
while, when I started marathoning, I would go to the track and do some speed work, but that was again that was too much work. So I would do a
Yeah.
5K, and that was my speed work. I'm not sure
Gotcha.
I answered your question, but there was never any great super strategy. Keep, I didn't keep track of my carbs or my calories or
Yeah.
in fact, I've lost most of my logs on how many miles I ran.
Mm.
But like I said, I don't think I ever hit 2,000 miles in a year. Um, it was not, I was doing okay with the mileage I was doing.
Yeah. Well, like you said, I think once you have a certain level of fitness, it's a little bit different too. You don't have to be putting in all of the miles that maybe you do in the beginning, I'm sure. And I think you're just proof that you can do as many marathons as you want with any strategy that works for you. I don't think there's any one way to tackle any of this.
Yeah, whatever. It worked for me.
Yes. Yeah. No, that's great. Well, cool. Well, a couple questions that I do like to ask, just because there's a lot of newer runners that listen to these podcasts that are maybe not thinking about their first marathon yet, but thinking about getting into running in general. So I know I asked for just kind of overall advice, but do you have any advice for that person specifically, somebody who's maybe thinking about dipping their toes into running, just period?
Do it.
Do it. Yeah, that's
Just
great.
do it. I it's not for everybody, but I think for most people that try it, they get a sense of accomplishment. And endorphins are real. You know, it's you can either create your own endorphins, or get a drug, and it's cheaper to buy running shoes than it is methamphetamines. So,
Sure.
but just try it. It may not be for you, but uh, try it and try it.
Yeah, that's great. No, keep it simple. Just do it. Just get out there and start doing it. And I think you kind of find your way along the way,
Yeah,
on what's going to work for you and what's not going to work for you.
right. And the way I happened into it, as I mentioned way back when, is that walk, walk a mile or two or three, get so you can do that fairly easily, um, and then run to the telephone pole, and then walk to the next
Yeah.
telephone pole. Do that, and when you're just starting out, run at a pace where you can have an easy conversation. If you can't talk when you're running, you're you're going too fast when you're starting out.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Just build your base. It'll get a little bit more comfortable over time, but definitely do
Yeah,
some base building
or
in the beginning.
find somebody pace compatible that likes to talk, and ask them that question that will elicit a 7-minute answer.
I think that's the best advice you've given, honestly, on this whole
I
podcast.
think
Is
so.
it
Yeah,
just
I think so.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. Well, cool. And then another one that I like to ask, we kind of touched on it a little bit, is just about nutrition. Like you talked about that you really like the goo gels. Were there any other types of gels or nutrition or anything like that that you felt like worked particularly well? Or I guess even the opposite, is there anything that just did not work for you?
Nothing that did not work. And when I say gel, there's like a power. I think it's made by Powerade, and
Yeah.
there's a honey stinger type thing. So any of the things in the little tinfoil packs, uh, all work pretty well. And don't litter.
That's a
Don't
good one.
litter. I would be doing 5Ks, or any race, doesn't matter. And you grab the little paper cup, and then you take a sip of whatever you're drinking. Fold it up, hang on to it till the trash barrel. And I would give
Yeah.
people the dickens. They'd wad it up and then throw it into the ditch, like where nobody could ever find it. So don't litter.
No, yeah,
Drink.
especially on race day too. I think people take advantage of all the volunteers that are there and everything, and see all the cups and just think, "Oh, I'm just gonna throw everything
Yeah.
everywhere." But yeah, don't
In,
take advantage of the volunteers.
I've done some races in South Bend, Indiana, and near their trash cans, they have a sign that made me laugh, and it says, "Nice toss there." The people are throwing it toward the trash can. It said, "Nice
Yeah.
toss. Now pick it up and put it in the trash can."
That's great. They got it figured out.
I would often, even when when I was running real, I would walk the water stop, just not slow, but to make sure I got the drink.
Yeah.
So make sure you get more than just a half a teaspoon.
Yeah. Do you rely on the water stations for the most part, or did you ever take like a hydration vest or anything with you?
Um, Only once did I take a belt. It was one of the Bostons that was supposed to be 80 degrees. So I took a water belt with some water in it. But as it turned out, I didn't need it because the aid stations were fine. So that's the only
Mm,
time I did it, other than when I would be training, I would do it. In fact, with the running groups, a lot of times if we were doing a long run, the night before, the morning of, we would go out and plant gallon jugs of water, behind the stop sign or what. So, but I always took water, um, always took water on training runs, and on some of the relays that I did, there was one relay, what it was supposed to be like 3 miles leg. I had done that leg before, so I didn't need any water because I've done this leg before. Well, they changed the leg, and I got lost, and I was out like for 3 hours
oh,
on a three
geez.
miler, and I didn't take any water. So on relays, if I'm going through the woods, I would always take water because you never know if you're going to get lost.
Yeah. Are the relays? I've never done one myself. Are they typically a little less marked, or like more trail runs or something like that?
Um, Generally speaking, they're well marked. But on this
Okay.
particular, there's a follow-up. In this particular case, I had done this one before. So it says, go up a mile and a half and turn left on whatever, Pine Road. So I went up and got to Pine Road and turned left, but they had changed it, and we were supposed to go another, say, quarter of a mile and turn on Happy Road. What? So
Yeah.
I thought I knew what I was doing, and I wasn't the only one. Several of us we kept going and going, and we were out for, it may not have been 3 hours, but well over 2 hours for 3 miles because we got all screwed up. Um, and generally speaking, they're well marked. There was one race in Michigan that I did a few times that the locals didn't like people running on their dirt roads and through the
Mm.
woods, and they would go out and tear down the blazes.
Oh, geez.
But like North Country Trail, a lot of the state trails, they're very well marked. They're blue dots on a tree with paint. Uh,
Gotcha.
mostly well marked.
So
Mostly
the
well marked.
locals would go out and mess with the like
Oh
actual
yeah,
race stuff?
yeah,
That's crazy.
yeah, yeah.
Like,
It
what do they
was.
want people to get lost out there or something or what?
Um, they. Yeah, I don't think they cared what happened to us.
Yeah, that's
And,
crazy.
um, yeah, that happened a couple times where it was the locals just tore things apart. But
Yeah, that's insane.
that was infrequent.
Sure.
Do trail runs.
Sorry.
Do
Dude,
some
I would
trail
love
runs.
to. I
Yeah.
was actually just talking to somebody not too long ago that I think my first trail experience was a little bit ruined for me because it was just a bad time of year. The trail wasn't the best, so I need to go back and do it again now that I kind of know what to expect and can pick a better time of year to to do it. Maybe get
Right.
better shoes this
And
time too.
I did a marathon in Arizona, Apache Junction, Arizona, and the first 8 miles were on gravel in the desert. Then about mile 8, it turned onto a highway, and
Mm.
running on the shoulder, I caught my toe in a speed bump thing and went
Oof.
down and landed on my arm and it cut my eye and broke my glasses, and I finished. And when I
Uh-huh.
got home, I went to the doctor and I had a couple broken ribs.
Oh my gosh, no way.
Yeah. And if you
And
do trail
you didn't
running,
even know.
what's that?
I said and
What's,
you didn't even know. You finished anyways.
no, I knew it hurt, but I
Yeah.
finished
Yeah.
because it hurt. Um, so that was one. And with trail running, don't be surprised if you don't want to scare anybody away, but you might trip on a route or something. That's part of the game. And,
That's
and when
yeah,
I'm
that's just what you
when
do.
I'm when I'm running trails, there's two things that scare me. One's snakes, and the
Mhm.
other thing is that sticks that look like snakes.
Uh-huh, uh-huh. What's the worst is after you see one snake and then every
Oh,
stick
everything,
after
yeah,
that looks
yeah,
like a
everything.
snake.
Yeah, it's like the guy's crawling. It's everything's it's the mirage. It's not water.
Yes.
It's a snake.
Yes, yes. No, that's definitely not fun. I try to block out all of that when I'm running out on a trail or something like that, but it is hard. Your mind just wanders a little bit when you're out there by yourself.
Now, I'll turn the tables here. Where you live, are there trails through the woods and nice running trails in the woods?
Yeah, there's a lot of so being from the West Coast, it's nothing like elevation wise, it's much different. There's not a lot of like mountain trail runs that we can do, but there's a lot of really beautiful state parks out here that have
Yeah,
some really great trails. And there's a lot of clubs out here too for trail running that I would love
yes,
to get involved with and kind of explore a little bit more.
yeah.
But
The
yeah,
one,
it's decent.
yeah, one of the relay that I did probably 8 or 10 times. That was just a 1 day relay. The one where they screwed up the blazes. The name of the race is Dances with Dirt.
Oh,
That's the name of the relay,
foreshadowing.
and yeah, Dances with Dirt. But it's fun.
That's cool. Yeah. Do you have one that you prefer over the other? Or are they just different for you? Do you prefer trail over pavement or both?
I prefer like paved bike trails or gravel,
Mm,
limestone, crushed limestone bike paths over the trails because I've taken many a tumble in trails.
sure.
When I run, I don't pick my feet up very high. I kind of shuffle along, so I, I take a tumble. I like crushed limestone the best because uh, it's nice surface and it's not too hard. It's easier on your knees and hips and everything. That's my
Sure.
favorite. I hate
Cool.
I hate treadmills. Although
Do you?
I encourage people to you can use it. You use a treadmill. I'm just not going to. They're good
Did you
for
ever
you.
do any long runs on a treadmill or anything like that, or
Six
just short
six
ones?
miles, 6 miles,
6.
and I've had
That
friends that have done 18, 20 miles on it.
yeah, I don't know how people do that.
Yeah. We have a
The only
treadmill. We have a very nice treadmill in our family room, and Pat will do 6 or 8 miles, a few days a week at least, if she doesn't go outside. And I just can't do it. I my mind wanders, and I end up sometimes in the washing machine because I slip off the back of the treadmill, or I. So, it's a, so I prefer outside.
Yeah, you just
I'd rather
avoid it at all
fall. I'd
costs.
rather fall on a dirt or limestone trail than end up with my butt in the washing machine, or
Sure,
my
sure.
head on the earth. Another fun, yeah. We've done quite a few marathon or relays in the snow, and that's fun.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
That's fun.
What were those like?
Um, they're in Indiana. 10. I think there were 3-person relay teams. It was like 11-mile loops, and there was one year there was like 10, 11 inches of snow, and my buddy got the first leg, and it took him almost 3 hours to do 11 miles, and then he and all the first leg people, they knocked the snow down, so I was able to do it like half of that time. But that's fun.
Yeah, that's good timing.
It's part of the adventure. I mean, a lot of it's just adventure. It's an
Yes.
experience, and I haven't thought about these things for years since you bring them up and it jogs a memory. In fact, I was thinking before the call, what the heck am I going to talk about? Because I couldn't. So you're bringing back a lot of memories for me. Most of them really good.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it seems like overall you've had an amazing kind of running career, like not a ton of injuries, a couple maybe hiccups, but nothing too crazy it
That's right.
seems
Yeah,
like.
I've been real fortunate. I feel real lucky, and I'm 75 years
Yeah.
old, and I want to keep running. In fact, when a few years ago when I had my knee scoped, uh, I told the surgeon, I said, "Oh, I want to set the world record at marathoners at age 92." And he said, "Well, what's the record?" I said, "I don't know. I haven't set it yet."
I love that. So
Yeah,
would you ever run another marathon again?
I would like to. I would like to. It's just
Very
getting my
cool.
head around the training, because
Yes.
I'll go out and do 3 or 4 miles 4 or 5 days a week now. Uh,
Yeah.
and I'm happy when I'm done with 3 or 4 miles. And the thought of doing a couple 20-milers kind of isn't enticing, but I would like to. I need to lose a few pounds. Um, I would like to. I'd like to get. I got 111 right now, and that looks a lot of times people they look at that and think three, like Roman numeral 3. So
Yeah.
I'd like to do 112, so it doesn't look like Roman numeral 3. I would
Just
like to.
one tick off one more. Yeah.
Right, I
When's
would
the
like.
last one that you ran?
November of 2016 in
Okay.
Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Yeah,
Very
and
cool.
then it was a few months after that I had my knee scoped, uh,
Okay.
and I had qualified for Boston, but I couldn't go that year, so I haven't been back to Boston since 2016 was my last Boston, and I probably wouldn't.
Gotcha.
I love Boston, but it's expensive. We
Sure.
Yeah, we spend a lot of money there, and that's why our kids aren't getting any inheritance because we spend all our money going to Boston
Well, you
marathons.
brought them to Boston and inspired them to
We did,
run,
yeah,
so
we
now
did,
now
yeah.
it's their turn, right?
We took Pat's sister one year. We took my daughter one year. We took 2 grandkids one year. Uh, so that's their inheritance.
Definitely. Yeah, inheritance by experience, I think is
Right.
is
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Well, I have to ask, what made you run, like, once you hit your 100-mile mark or your 100 marathon mark, what made you want to do 11 more? Why not stop at, the even number there?
Um, we had planned a few more trips after that, and there was no grand scheme. The Bayshore Marathon, where I did my 100th, is in May, late Labor Day or Memorial Day weekend, and we had a couple set up for the fall. Um, and just did it. There was really no grand plan. We just
Yeah.
kept doing them, and it just happened.
Yeah. No, yeah, I just asked because like 100, that had to be the milestone to get over.
Yeah,
So it
yeah.
seems like the next goal would be like way out there.
I didn't plan on quitting it at 111, but
Uh-huh.
after I got my knee scoped, didn't run for a few months it was probably a few months I didn't run after that. And then I kept running, at shorter distances, and I've done a bunch of half marathons since then. And
Okay.
and for anybody that wants to do, some distance, half marathons are awesome. I don't think I've done 111 half marathons, but they're 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 awesome. And the last half marathon, well, not the last one I did, but we did one a year ago in Deadwood, South Dakota. That's really fun.
Cool.
It's on a crushed limestone trail. So um, I didn't plan to do any certain number, and I didn't plan to quit at any certain number. It just happened. But half
It just
marathons are
happened.
great because
Yeah.
you can do a 10, a couple 10 milers, 11 milers, and then do a half marathon.
Yeah, and then you're ready to go. Yeah, I
Yeah.
like that distance a lot too. It's also a distance where I feel like I can actually race it, like actually
Yes.
push myself and not feel terrible at the end,
Right.
which is
Yes.
nice.
Yeah. And being my age, even at my slow pace, I usually win my age group because there aren't many of us doing it.
I love
And
that.
somebody said, "Oh, geez, there's only one or two in the age group." I said, "Well, that's their problem.
Yeah,
I was
perfect.
there. Where in the hell were they?"
Yeah, someone's got to show up in your age
Right.
group,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Show up and beat me. Then
Yeah, right. I
they're
love
great,
that.
great distances.
Yes, yeah,
So
I agree.
and actually they're great for Pat too, because she doesn't have to sit around for 4 hours at the finish line waiting for me to
Sure.
finish. Yeah.
Sure, much quicker. Yeah.
Yes.
If you had to pick one where you would run your next marathon, would you go back to one of the ones you've already ran, or would you go somewhere completely new?
I right off the bat, I would say Ogden, Utah, because of the ponytails and tie-dye T-shirts.
Yeah, good crowd.
And it's friendly people.
Yeah,
St. George is beautiful. All the ones I've done in Utah are really really nice. Um, Boston, I mean, I would like to do Boston again, but it probably wouldn't just because of the expense.
yeah, big commitment.
And there's in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, near Marquette, Michigan, there's a marathon and a half marathon I've done each a couple times. That's really nice. It's on an old rail trail. It's
Cool.
overall you overall downhill. There's a few uphills, but that's really nice. And the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, right on Lake Superior, is really
Yeah,
pretty.
yeah, downhill's the way to go
It
for
is.
sure.
I like gravity.
Yes, yeah. I thought I was being smart for my first marathon and running something flat, and then I found out that people run marathons downhill, and I was like, well, now I got to find one
Right.
that's even easier.
St. George, Utah you lose a lot of distance. There's a huge hill at about mile 7 to 8, about 6% increase. But after
Oh,
that, it is downhill.
that's great.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
that's
beautiful. It's
perfect.
red rock. You run by some old volcanoes and everything.
Cool. Yeah. I'll have to check it out. You're giving people great ideas for where to look up these marathons and where to race. So I
Yeah,
appreciate you name dropping these places.
yeah. St. George is usually early May. It's a
Okay.
beautiful town. People are really friendly.
What's your favorite time of year to race usually?
Um, Fall, autumn.
Fall. Hmm.
Yeah, it's a little
Just as
brisk.
beautiful. The weather's a little better.
Yeah, it's brisk and let in uh, fall, autumn. Yep, September, October, November. Um, I don't like running in heat. I'd rather run in 15-degree weather than 80-degree weather.
I agree with you on
And
that. Yeah.
I've done a few marathons in the 80s. In one race, it was in low 90s at the finish, and that's just a death march.
Brutal. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's too much. I agree. I would much rather run cold than warm for sure.
yep, yeah.
Um, well, cool. Well, one other question I like to ask kind of towards the end of these things is about shoes. Since I'm sure you've gone through several different shoes. What have been your favorites? Like, what brands do you like? What have you been using more recent? What do you like for shoes?
Right now, I have about 11 pair,
Yeah,
and I have
I can
uh,
imagine.
my favorites over the years when I weighed a lot less were Asics.
Okay,
Um, but right now I have Asics, New Balance, and Brooks, and even what's that? Hoka. Yeah, Hoka. They're a lot heavier, but the they're, they're more forgiving for old people, so they have a lot more cushion. But
sure.
for years and years, it was Asics. My first pair of Asics Tiger gels, the ones that were too small, and then when I got the right fitting, they're perfect. So I've had pretty much everything. I've never had Nike for some,
Really?
nothing against it. I just never
Yeah.
did. Um, and I like to change the color of the shoelaces for some reason.
Do
I'm
you?
not a Yeah, I'm not a fashion mogul or anything. I just like to change shoelaces sometimes.
Yeah, why not? And I always give the disclaimer, I guess I didn't do it this time, but I always tell people that there's so many resources out there for getting your feet measured, going to your local run store, getting a second opinion. So go do those things. Everybody's feet are a little bit different, so
Yeah,
every
and
every shoe is a little different.
one of my best running buddies works at a running store in Lansing, Michigan.
Mm,
So he's real smart. Plus, he gives me his discount.
I was gonna say you got the hookup with him.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's
The
great.
hookup, hook up for Hokas.
Perfect. Well, cool. Well, we've covered a lot. I mean, it's hard to break down 111 marathons. You've had quite the running career so far, but I appreciate you breaking down what you did and kind of giving us some advice on what you would recommend to newer runners. Just thank you so much for going through all that.
Yeah, this has been really fun. Like I said, uh, anticipating this podcast, I couldn't imagine what we were going to talk about, but you've made it very easy. It's been fun.